In tonight's deep dive, online retailers Shein and Temu are facing pressure in the U.S. as officials push for investigations into their labor practices and alleged counterfeiting. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is investigating Shein, while Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton is calling for a federal investigation into both companies. Let's bring in former U.S. aid official and current director of forced labor programs at Global Rights Compliance, Shamir Ghazwami. So break down these allegations for us. What do they exactly mean?
Well, Perry, thank you for having me on, and thank you for covering this topic. What this means is that there is a pretty big problem of goods that could be made by forced labor and other labor violations entering into U.S. markets. And this is not just the first time that both of these companies have been implicated in some kind of labor violations, including up to forced labor. In fact, the U.S. Congress in past investigations has found them in violation of U.S. law that bans imports of goods made by forced labor into the U.S. And really, when it comes to China, this is just the tip of the iceberg that we have goods of concern coming from China. The Chinese government, as a matter of state policy, forces Uyghur people who are an ethnic Turkic minority in the northwest region of China to work in what essentially are forced labor camps to produce goods that end up coming into the U.S. and into Western markets as well. Uyghur activists, we work a lot with Uyghur activists. They tell us that about arbitrary incarcerations, mass sterilizations, and family separations that are routine. There are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Uyghur people that are oppressed by the Chinese state. And now, most recently, through a state scheme of labor transfers, they're being moved against their will from their homes to other parts of China to work in factories that produce goods to the West. In fact, my organization, Global Rights Compliance, back in June, we released a report that showed 4 critical minerals mined and processed in the Uyghur region produce goods such as coffee mugs, power tools, and household and commercial paint that are entering into U.S.
So I'm guessing he's summing up that it was used by cheap labor or child labor in their country prior to being shipped to the United States. You know, we know that's true. I used to work for a logistics company back in the day. And when we used to unload the trucks, you would see the dust all on the trucks that came from the ships from China. And you would see little kid footprints on there, like footprints that big. I swear to God, like that big. And be like, there's no way this was a Chinese man's footprints. This is a Chinese child footprints. But in their country, they can do that type of stuff. Now, are they saying that they're pushing to say, oh, well, if that product is being made by said kid, then we don't want to buy it or use it in our country? You could say that, but that's for a lot of stuff that's coming out of China. So you would have to almost go into their Chinese factories unless they're coming to the United States and doing that. Now, that's different. Now you got to go by our rules. You know what I mean? So if they're going to do their dirt, you got to do it in China. You can't do your dirt in the United States. So. And I understand that completely. I understand that we're trying to investigate them, but if it didn't work the first time, I doubt it's going to keep working. I know y'all want to investigate these countries with what they do, but I guarantee you all countries probably do this or do something such as it, you know, where they're investing into kids working for them, probably paying them cents on the dollar. Adults are working with them too. I go to this Chinese food restaurant down the street. This kid, no more than 12, 13 in there doing the cashier shit. And they doing it right. They can count better than most adult Americans, I'll tell you that. But it's a kid nonetheless. She's supposed to be in school somewhere. Maybe they did homeschool. I don't know the situation. But I know she's not at the legal age to work behind the register, at least. So, I don't know. Let's continue. See what he got to say.
Markets.
So shoppers go to these sites because, I mean, look, things are cheaper. The economy isn't the best. Are there alternatives that consumers can go to?
There absolutely are alternatives, and I think it's not, I think, appropriate for us to put this on consumers. These are massive global companies that have invested in supply chains in China, and it is their job, because it's the law. It is their job to know where their goods are coming from, know where the products are coming from. So it's really up to them to assure American consumers that they are not tainted by supply chains, and therefore we here in the West are not buying goods made by forced labor. Now, the U.S. has some of the strongest laws in the world. We have an outright import ban of goods made by forced labor to come into the U.S., and companies have to abide by those laws. And we have those laws because, as Americans, we value freedom, we value human dignity, we value the rule of law. And if you're a business that wants to do business in America, then you should comply by those laws and uphold our values.
So your organization released a report earlier this year showing many global supply chains and leading brands are tied to forced labor in China. Tell us why.
Let me pause this real quick.
because it's so.
This doesn't just apply to China, though. That applies to Korea. It applies to Japan. Imagine when I know that they just did a federal crackdown. I know ICE went into a Hyundai dealership or a Hyundai manufacturing company where they thought Americans were working, but technically there were a bunch of South Koreans there. And those South Koreans were all getting paid under the table. They were all there, huddled in there. They were actually all not supposed to be in this country. So it doesn't just apply to Venezuelans or anybody, Ugandans or whatever. It applies to everybody, even Koreans, even Chinese people that come over this country and use their labor from their country to pay them under the table and not American wages. You know what I mean? We set standards for people. We bring you in the country so you can pay Americans more money. You get your money from us, and you get in return, you pay for Americans to live in here. You can get Americans to work. That's how I see it. Now, this has always been going on. I think it's going to continue to be going on for a little bit. I doubt anything is going to really happen. It's just a waste of resources, if you ask me. But I'm glad they're getting on it. At the end of the day, it's better than nothing. That being said, it's your boy AngeloSavage. Tell me what y'all think about this in the comment section. If you've worked a job and there's been, like, say, illegal immigrants that you suspect, and it could be Spanish illegal immigrants, Japanese, anything, Jamaican, it don't matter. You don't have to be Venezuelan to be a legal immigrant. You could be anybody that's not supposed to be here, that you're an illegal immigrant. That's how that is. That being said, y'all tell me what y'all think about that in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to like the video for the YouTube algorithm. Peace.